do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry!
What is going on, everybody? How is everybody doing today? Welcome back here today to another episode of the Just Ball On podcast. And today I'm doing another iteration of the 5 Things Friday that I debuted last Friday. So I have 5 different topics that I want to talk about. Some have even like subtopics within them. And then I'm going to start off with just kind of my thoughts about like the first night of March Madness. So I'm recording this the morning of the 22nd. You guys will probably see this as the Friday round of 64 games are currently happening. And listening to this then. But the topics are pretty much, I'm going to go just talk about some March Madness games from yesterday, which is like not in the 5. I want to talk about eliminated playoff teams. There's currently 5 teams that are eliminated right now from playoff contention. 2 in the East, 3 in the West. Gonna do like maybe 2 to 3 minutes on each team, maybe previewing what their offseason could look like. But after the draft lottery happens, we'll definitely be doing mock off seasons going into those. I want to talk about the Rockets' young core surplus. I feel like they have a lot of talent. They're gonna have some incoming talent. Who's gonna stay? Who could maybe go? And how that could look like over the next couple of seasons. Where do the Nets go from here? The Nets are 26-44. They don't own their first round picks like directly over the next 4 years, and they don't have a franchise player on the team. So I want to talk about them. I want to talk about the Knicks the ceiling at full strength. Are they going to get OG back for a fully healthy for the playoffs? Mitchell Robinson should be back. Still TBD on Julius Randle. What will that look like? And then ideal round 1 matchup. So what I want to see from round 1, like that, I think is like ideal. Like that would be my dream scenario for round number 1. So those are the 5 topics. Like I said, I just want to talk about the college basketball games from yesterday. Just kind of briefly talk about like, we'll go through each one. Like I'm going to spend like 10 seconds talking about each one. So Wagner UNC, domination from UNC as we expected from a 1 seed. Arizona beat Long Beach State. I know Long Beach State was going to fire their coach in the Big West prior to their conference tournament. And then they ended up winning the tournament, so they got a bid for the March Madness. I like Arizona. I've been growing to like them over the last couple of weeks. Iowa State blew out South Dakota State. Tennessee blew out St. Peter's. Wasn't even close. Creighton. Akron played pretty well against Creighton in that first half, and even the beginning of the second. But then Creighton pulled away. Morehead State, same thing. Played very tough against Illinois in the first half. So like shout out to them. But Illinois ended up winning by 16. I'm gonna save the Oakland one for last. Sanford, Kansas. I fell asleep like in the second half of this game, and I watched it back this morning. Sanford got robbed, man. That coach did a phenomenal job. I mean, like Hunter Dickinson played very well, but that was all ball at the end in that chase down block. Sanford got robbed, and as somebody that had Sanford, I was a little bit upset. Gonzaga blew out McNeese, no 12-5 upset there. Man, the Mormons let me down. I was high on BYU. I thought they could have beaten Duquesne, and I thought they were going to beat Iowa State. And no, they lost to Duquesne by 4 in an upset, 11-6 upset, the second biggest upset, or tied for that. Basically, I was big on South Carolina. They lost to Oregon. I mean, it was somewhat close in the first half, somewhat close in the beginning of the second half, and then Oregon were pretty much pulled away. Kunstnard, I don't know much about him, but he freaking balled out. He dropped 40 for them. NC State beat Texas Tech. I was on that. BJ Burns is him. So much fun to watch. Dayton beat Nevada. Nevada, choke job. They were up by like 16 plus. I think even more possibly. And Deron Holmes and the Flyers came back and won. Shout out to them. Texas beat Colorado State in a pretty low scoring game. Honestly, like disappointing from Colorado State. 11 points in the first half. I guess Virginia rubbed off on them in the play-in. Washington State beat Drake in a very entertaining game, especially in that second half. And a lot of people had Drake as an upset. So that was kind of, I wouldn't say shocking, but shout out to Washington State winning. And they could definitely maybe pull off an upset in round number 2. And then Michigan State beat Mississippi State. One MSU was going to win. One MSU was going to lose. I was on Mississippi State. So shout out to Tom Izzo getting it done in March. But yeah, Oakland, Kentucky. I can't stand Calipari, man. I know he's a great recruiter, and they won a title, or they went to a title in 2014 as a lower seed with the Harrison twins, and they won it all with Anthony Davis, but he couldn't win it all with Karl-Anthony Towns. They lost to Wisconsin that year. I just feel like every single year, Kentucky has one of the deepest rosters. I know like, they're freshmen, they're young, they have 2 top 5 picks in Reed Shepherd and Rob Dillingham. Both did not play all that well in this game on both ends of the floor. It was tough to watch. Antonio Reeves, though, one of the best players in the country, showed up, but nobody else did. The constant like DJ Wagner starting him. I know he doesn't play more minutes than Dillingham and Shepherd. I don't get that still. And Wagner did not play well. Any of these draft prospects did not play well for Kentucky. It's just like non-existent. They have a deep team and they just don't show up. They ended up losing by 4 to Oakland. Shout out to Gohiki. I'm going to butcher his name because I couldn't really watch it with sound. No, there's no I in that. Galki. I couldn't watch it with sound, so I didn't know how the announcers were pronouncing his name. Obviously, I didn't know about him at Oakland, but this dude, sharpshooter. He's a future Miami Heat. He was 10 for 20 from 3. And Kentucky, biggest upset of the weekend, loses as a 3 seed. Yeah, I'm done with Kentucky. I thought they could have actually made a run. I did. I know they couldn't play defense, but I should have known better. I know people were like, Matt, their defense is horrible. Don't take them to go far. And I didn't listen. I thought, you know what? Calipari's going to get this team. But no, I'm done with Calipari. One of the most overrated coaches, if not the most overrated coach in all of college basketball. I know he's got a big contract, so he's going to be coming back. He's an elite recruiter, and he can pay now. So, like, he's still going to get the recruits. But, man, schematically, just him just not adjusting to Akron's zone at all. Horrible performance from Calipari and the Wildcats, man. Such a disappointing ending. It's gonna make me mad because I thought Kentucky could go far and I wanted to see more Rob Gillingham and Reed Shepherd, and I'm pissed that they didn't play well. I don't think it should hurt their draft stock, but either way, Wild. Pretty good first day. Hopefully Friday's even better today that you guys are seeing this. And let's get into 5 Things Friday. All right, so let's start off with my first topic. I want to talk about eliminated playoff teams in the NBA. So Washington Wizards, currently 12-58. They have the worst record in the NBA right now. The worst winning percentage at a 17%. They are 12-58. And we knew they were going to be bad. Once they traded away Bradley Beal, once they ended up just kind of fully committing to this rebuild, we knew they weren't going to be good this year. Did I think that they could maybe have been like a 12th seed in the East? Yes. I didn't think that they were going to be this bad. Like, we saw how historically bad the Pistons were to start off the year. I did not think the Wizards were going to end up worse than them. And here we are. Now, they moved Daniel Gafford at the deadline. That's really it. They made the trade for Marvin Bagley with the Pistons, like giving them not much in return. Mike Muscala, who really wasn't a big part of that team going forward. But yeah, so let's talk about the Wizards briefly. It's going to be an interesting outlook for them. Now, they're going to hopefully add a top 5 pick in this draft. So you'll have a new player to get excited about. I know it's not the best draft in the world. And like I just said, we saw guys that could go to the Wizards, like Reed Shepherd and Rob Dillingham, struggle against Oakland. But hey, don't let recency bias trump what you thought about these prospects before March Madness. It shouldn't really matter too much. So yeah, we could go by like contracts going forward. Jordan Poole, it's not pretty. $29 million next year, $31 million the following year, $34 million after that. So you basically have 3 years, $100 million left on this deal. You got to eat it. He's not been good this year. He's been one of the most disappointing players in the league. I think in terms of volume, contract, expectations, in maybe this new environment in Washington, the most disappointing and maybe the worst player in the league this year. But you know what? He's 24 years old. You don't plan on being good next year. You would hope maybe in 26 is when you can flirt with the play-in tournament, I think. I mean, you could exceed expectations next year, but he's under contract. Nobody's taking him, so he's going to be back. Kyle Kuzma, you can trade him for sure. Kuzma's having a solid year, 22.5 points, 47 from the field, 34 from 3 is a good enough stretch for on a descending contract where it's $23 million next year, $20 million the year after that, $19 million in 2027, and he's 28 years old. A team could definitely give you 1, maybe 2 first-round picks. Would they be unprotected? Probably not, but you could get some returning talent for Kyle Kuzma, and I would think about doing that if there's a good enough offer on the table. If not, wait till the deadline, and maybe he has a good year next year. You could trade him in the 2025 offseason. I wouldn't rush to trading him for 2 late first-round picks. I don't think that's worth it. Tyus Jones, free agent, been very good for them this year. If they don't take a point guard in the draft, they should re-sign Tyus Jones, in my opinion. He's 27 years old. 12 points, 7 assists. He does not turn the ball over whatsoever. He's been a good 3-point shooter this year. He plays tough, high basketball IQ. He's 27 years old. You know what, Washington, let's get some stability. If you didn't trade him at the deadline, let's extend him. Give him a 4-year deal. Sign him till his age 31, 32 season, and he can help develop some of this young core that we'll get to in a little bit, because he's a very good passer. He doesn't need the ball in his hands. He doesn't need to get up 15 shots a night. He's somebody that can be a good facilitator for you and probably does not mind taking a step back as long as he's the starting point guard. And if you're not going to draft Nikola Topic, and even if you do, I think it doesn't hurt to have Jones either as a mentor or at least a starting point guard until the point guard you draft is ready to fully be the starter. So they should 100% re-sign Tyus Jones. Bagley, he's probably going to be back, $12.5 million, fine, big man depth. Rashawn Holmes is going to opt into his $12.8 million player option. You're most likely have to bring him back. I'm not a big fan of Landry Shamet, but I think they can get off that contract, so he should be gone. It's crazy. He's still just 26 years old. He's made a lot of money in this league. Now, he could have made $11 million next year, but he's not playing well enough to earn that. Like, Landry Shamet's career earnings right now $29 million. Shout out to Landry Shamet getting all that money. Bilal Koulibaly, you found something. Let's keep developing him. He's just 19. He's shown some flashes, but you need to keep prioritizing his development. He needs to be back into the fold next year as a top option, as somebody you don't want to put on the back burner that I think Denny Avdia overcame. Rui Hachimura didn't. You don't want that to happen with Bilal. Let's keep progressing him. He's still 19, and that's why I think bringing back Tyus Jones is so important. I just mentioned Denny Avdia, another building block for you. I think that's like a bonus, because obviously Jordan Poole's gonna be back here next year. You could choose not to play him, like the Knicks did it with Evan Fournier. He's making a little bit more money, so it's tough to do, and he's still young. But I think something you want next year for Denny is to be a top scoring option. I think that's why trading away Kuzma could help out Denny Avdia a little bit. Denny's improved a ton this season. The three-point shot is there. The overall shot selection is there. The playmaking, I think, is even a little better. He's a good rebounder. He's a smart guy, and he's under a great contract as well. Like, Washington did a phenomenal job on that contract. $15 million next year, 14, 13, and then $11 million in 2028. When he's basically going to be 27, 28 years old in the middle of his prime. So good contract there. Bring him back. Johnny Davis, it's looking like he's a bust, unfortunately. And he's been getting some runtime as of late because Washington's had all these injuries. And there was a game the other night that I was watching. Was it I think it was the Rockets game. They got blown out. Everybody scored in double figures. Literally, Rashawn Holmes had 12. Patrick Baldwin Jr., who's not been good, has 12. Same draft class as Johnny Davis. Kispert, 16. Jordan Poole, 13. Off the bench, Anthony Gill, 12. Champagnie, 16. Jared Butler, 16. Bernard, 16. Or Butler had 15, excuse me. But you know what? You know who's the only player that did not score in double figures? That would be Johnny Davis, who started, played 27 minutes, 1 for 7 from the field at 2 points, minus 11. I think we have to cut the cord on Johnny Davis, unfortunately. Corey Kispert, I like his shot. I'm cool with him still coming off the bench. But if a team would throw you a first-round pick because of his three-point shooting ability, I would think about it. I'm also open to re-signing Corey Kispert after this year. But like going down this list here, like Vukovic, they just signed, 20 years old. Like, give him some run next year. I don't think Patrick Baldwin or Gale or Livers or Eugene or anybody else here is going to be part of this future next year. It's crazy. They're still, I think, technically paying like Jan Mahimi, which is wild. But yeah, you're going to draft somebody. I think basically for the Wizards, you're going to have to keep Poole. I would move Kuzma if I could. I want to re-sign Tyus Jones, keep prioritizing the development of Bilal and Denny, maybe work on an extension with Kispert, and let's go out and draft just best player available. I think Alex Sarr is perfect, trying to get a big man. Reece Shea, perfect as well. Somebody that doesn't need the ball in his hands, like, is not going to demand the ball right away. I like Topic. I don't mind Shepard. I don't love Cody Williams on this team. I don't love Rob Dillingham on this team. I don't love Ron Holland on this team. So I think it's either Sarr, Reece Shea, or Topic, in my opinion. So that's what I wanted to talk about for the Washington Wizards. Let's talk about the Detroit Pistons, who are just as bad as the Wizards. They are 12-57. They're just one less loss right now. So looking at this team, like Evan Fournier, you honestly could pick up that team option if you wanted to, because you might not use that cap elsewhere, and then you can use him in a trade, but I wouldn't. Let him walk. Wiseman, let him walk. Cade, obviously, is your guy going forward. You're going to work on that probably rookie max extension with Cade, which is fine because that doesn't kick in for another year. So you have your franchise guy. That's something Washington does not have. As good as like, or as much as I like Bilal and Denny, I don't think they're ever going to have that peak as a number one as Cade Cunningham. So you're good there, Detroit. Asor Thompson, send him to all the shooting camps in the offseason. Let him shoot as much as he can, because he needs to get that three-point shot up. He needs to get that overall just field goal percentage up as well, because it has not been pretty, and it's scary going on right now with the blood clots, and I'm hoping he's okay next year. But he's fine, like, on twos. He's good inside. He's a good slasher, good cutter. He needs to work on the free throw shots. He needs to work on the three-point shots if he wants to be effective as a true 3-and-D guy, which could be so vital to this Pistons team for sure. Jaden Ivey, I think also needs to work on his outside shot, but I think you have to have a sit-down with front office management. Is Ivy Cade going to work? Because Ivy could still have some trade value. It gets less and less each year as you get away from this rookie contract. And if Ivy does not take a step in year 3, that trade value could be out the window, because then he's going to be due that rookie extension soon from the 2022 class. You're not probably going to give it to him. Is he going to improve on the defensive side of the floor? Is the outside shot going to improve? And let alone, like, is he just going to improve with Cade? Like, he could go elsewhere and shine as a true, like, lead ball handler, but it's just not going to see that in Detroit, which is going to limit his trade value. So I think you have to make that big decision this offseason with Jaden Ivey. Isaiah Stewart, if he can get his head together, he is very valuable on that contract. 15 mil, 15 mil, 15 mil, team option of 15 mil in 2028. He can space the floor, bruiser big inside. That's good. I love Jalen Duren. I was a huge fan of that pick out of Memphis, where they got him 13th overall in 2022, and he should get an extension from you. Not this offseason, but the next. You can see what you got in some of these other guys. I think Simone Fontecchio, what a pickup for them. I would re-sign him. He's 28 years old, so I wouldn't give him more than a 3-year deal, but as a floor spacer for this team, he's maybe as useful as like Bojan Bogdanovic was on a much lesser scale or a much lesser value. Dollar-wise. So Fontecchio was a great pickup for the Pistons. Sasser showed some flashes, can be a nice kind of combo guard off the bench. Quentin Grimes does need to work on his efficiency a little bit too, but his defense is there. He just needs to work on that shot, and he has not been good though in Detroit so far, but he's been dealing, I know, with some knee injuries, so I'm hoping he's okay and fully healthy next year, as he'll be 24 years old and will be due an extension soon, so because he was in that 2022 class as well with Ivy. But I like him coming off the bench next year. And you have a good young core. Let's go and get some veterans. I think going into the offseason, that's what I would target. I know in the draft, like Alex Sarr, I mentioned him, could be pretty good, like right next to Jalen Duren in that front court. Reece Shea as a stretch 4. I would stay away from Topic, Dillingham, Shepard, the lead guards. They're going to be picking the top 5. I don't hate Cody Williams. I don't. I know he's been dealing with an ankle injury, but he's not been good recently for Colorado. You could look at Buzelis. I don't like Walter unless you move on from Ivy. Stephon Castle, I don't really love either for this team. So if you don't, I think, end up with Sarr, Reece Shea, and you drop to 5, I mean, I would probably take Ron Holland or Cody Williams or Buzelis, but then if not, I would maybe think about trading that pick as well, because I don't really know who's going to fit this team going forward. I mean, you're not landing a Pascal Siakam in free agency. This could be a Tobias Harris reunion, but I wouldn't do that if I were them. I'm just kind of looking at free agents right now. Like, I don't mind bringing in Jonas Valanciunas. I don't know if he wants to take a bench role, because obviously you want to start Jalen Duren, but somebody that's just like a veteran in the room. I like Buddy Hield for them off the bench. Funny enough, like, I don't know, DeMar DeRozan's floor spacing probably isn't what they need right now. The free agency class isn't the greatest, but there are some guys out there. Could they pay Nick Claxton a ton of money and just have him and Duren out there? No, you probably don't want to do that efficiency-wise. I mean, Miles Bridges would probably be a fit as well, but I don't know if they're going to want to do that. So, yeah, that was just me talking about the Detroit Pistons. All right, so next up we have the San Antonio Spurs. I think a little bit more interesting as well, because they have Victor Wembanyama. So, like, the Pistons have their guy in Cade Cunningham. Wemby could realistically be a top 10 player in the NBA next year when he turns 21, which is wild. He's putting up 21 points as a rookie in 19 and 20 ages this season, 10 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 3.5 blocks. Wild. A steal and a half, basically, 46 from the field. Once he gets that 3-point shot up, it's over. And he's a good free throw shooter, too. So as long as he can stay healthy, Wemby can actually be a top 10 guy in the league next year. So for the Spurs, you're building around him. Keldon Johnson's probably taken somewhat of a step back this year, but his contract is descending, and he's 24. I still think you give him another go next year. I think they can get out of Devontae Graham's contract. If not, I think only like $2.9 million of it's guaranteed. So you get out of that contract. Trey Jones, I think you want to slide him into the backup point guard. I think that's the main thing for the Spurs this offseason. Find that next point guard. That Zach Collins contract maybe isn't the greatest in the world. It goes from $7.5 million to $16 million and then $18 million in 2026, fully guaranteed. You have that bad contract, but you probably just want to keep diminishing his minutes. So maybe you look for some competition. It's talked about Jonas Valanciunas before. Then we all talked about Brook Lopez last year with the Spurs. They're going to have some cap space. Let's go out and maybe use a little bit of it. Maybe not on long-term deals. I think you can get Valanciunas on a two-year deal. Devin Vassell, though, I think you want to continue. Like, obviously you want to prioritize Wemby's development, but let's keep developing Devin Vassell. Let's get him to being an efficient, like consistent 20-point-per-game scorer, and could be maybe a number 2 offensively to Wemby, because Wemby's going to be that number 1. Vassell could still be that number 2. I still see it in him. 23 years old. Sohan, I think you're just continuing to develop him as a complementary piece to Wembanyama. I think maybe more of a bench guy, though, going forward. I think he needs to work on that shot, maybe overhaul that jumper a little bit. Not pretty. I have so much stock still invested in Malachi Branham. I think he did have a career high the other night, if I remember listening to the broadcast. They said it. Was it the other night? Or am I tripping? I think he had, was it the 23? Yeah, he had 23. So that was last week. That was on March 7th. Jesus, no, that was 2 weeks ago. Wow, time is flying. And then, wow, I haven't kept up with them since then, but 20 points. All right, back-to-back 20 points. And then 2, wow, 16 minutes a night. I don't know if the defense is that bad, and maybe that's not why, like, maybe that's why the minutes just dropped off. You guys can let me know. Damn, I have so much stock in Malachi Branham out of OSU. I've loved him a ton, but I think he still could be something. You have Julian Champagny, who could, like, he's basically making nothing going forward. Basley, Wesley, like, these guys, and, like, City Sissoko probably fighting for, like, the end of the rotation next year, but the Spurs are going to have a ton of cap space. They're going to have a top 5 pick, hopefully, with their pick, and then maybe another lottery pick via Toronto. They could really add some talent here. This could be a point guard team. This could be Topic. This could be Shepard. I'm starting to not like Dillingham as much for them specifically. They could also draft wings, I think that will hurt Keldon Johnson going forward, but I think that's fine. Like, I would still look at Stephon Castle could be somebody for this team, somebody you can experiment at the 1, the 2, or the 3. But even if you want a bucket off the bench, like Dalton Knecht could be with like that Raptors pick later on. You could look to draft like a Donovan Clingan or Filipowski too with that Raptors pick if you didn't want to sign like a Valanciunas to hopefully push like Zach Collins out of the rotation going forward. And then like with their pick, I think Cody Williams would be fine. I think Ron Holland would be fine. Shepard, Topic, Reese Shea, even Alex Sarr would be so much fun. So the Spurs have an exciting kind of future going forward. In the Western Conference as well, we got the Portland Trailblazers. I didn't mention that the Spurs are 15-54. You hope that's like the bottom of them going forward. But the Blazers are 19-50. They didn't really make any moves at the deadline going forward. I think that's something they probably should figure out this offseason, like what veterans can go. I mean, if somebody will offer you something for DeAndre Ayton, you take it. But he's 25 years old. I mean, he's fine as your starting center next year. Just continuing that. If somebody will take Jeremy Grant from you because he's been solid this year for you, you do that. $29 million next year, 32, 34, then a $36 million player option in 2028. You move on from Jeremy Grant, in my opinion. I think Anthony Simons isn't your franchise guy, but could definitely be a number 2 or number 3. I would like to see him in a lesser, like larger, like not as large of a role next year, and see if he can get that efficiency back up a little bit because he's got so much burden on him right now trying to be that number 1 guy. Brogdon, I'm fine still running this team, but if it's going to hinder Scoot's development, move on from him in the offseason. You could still probably get a back end first or maybe flip him for somebody else, maybe a little bit younger. And I'm sure like a team like San Antonio would be interested in him, who we already talked about. Time Lord, if he can't stay healthy, I would think about moving him. Like would OKC want some big man depth because he's not really making a ton of money. And is it worth having him and Aiden, and you're committing what, almost $40 million or $50 million a year, $45 million a year basically to centers? Matisse Thybulle, fine defensively, obviously we know, but not great offensively. I would not like to see him in the rotation next year. I think a big thing for the Blazers, whoever you draft with your first round pick, should not be a guard. Either it's Sarr, either it's like, even if it's in the back half of the top 10, you can look at T-John Salon, you can look at Dalton Knecht, you can look at Clingan, you can look at Filipowski. Even if it's Cody Williams, Ron Holland, Booz Ellis, like one of those guys, do not take a guard in my opinion. You can maybe stretch it with Jacoby Walter, but I really wouldn't do that either. And you prioritize Scoot mainly. Like, this is going to be such a big year for Scoot in year 2. I think you should try to bring in a new head coach and move on from Chauncey Billups. I didn't mention that for any other team, but like Pop will be back. Monty Williams will probably be back. We'll probably see a new head coach in Washington. But for Portland, I would like to see a new head coach. I would like to see you move on from Brogdon, give Scoot the full run, bring in a veteran point guard off the bench. Funny enough, like that could be somebody like a Tyus Jones, but he's going to cost too much. I think that, and they're not going to have cap space. I don't think Kyle Lowry, if he still wants to play, I would bring him in. I don't think Fultz, Monty Morris, maybe if he wants to be a veteran, maybe even Pat Bev. Like, let's light a fire under Scoot's fucking ass, man. Like, let's do that. Sorry for cursing, but I love Scoot so much as a prospect, and it's been such a disappointing rookie season. I want to see him develop in year 2, and if it doesn't happen in year 2, it's just going to be less and less likely that he's going to be a franchise point guard that we thought, or at least I thought he could be coming out of the Ignite. I think it's a big year for Shaedon Sharpe as well in year 3. I know injuries hindered year 2, but he's taken maybe a step back. I don't think a step back. Like, we saw the offensive output. The efficiency really wasn't all that there, but he's 20 years old. So he's going to be fine because he was a lot younger coming into the league. I think it's a big year for Scoot. It's a big year for Sharpe. Let Simons do his thing, but take a little bit of the burden off him. I think you move on from one of your centers. If you can get Jeremy Grant out of here, you do it. You get a new head coach. I think you have something in Jabari Walker. I think you have something in Tumani Kamara. You maybe even have something in Dwap Reith in a much lesser role. But you have some of your core, but I think Rob Will should go, Brogdon should go, Grant should go, and Chauncey Billups should go. I mean, if you can move Aiden, you can move Aiden. That's fine. But it might be tougher because of the contract, but I think we should see some notable changes from Portland this offseason. And the last team that we are going to talk about that is eliminated, nobody really expected this when the season started, and that is going to be the Memphis Grizzlies. Obviously, injuries have really hindered their 2024 season, but things should be looking good for them next year because they're going to get John Morant back fully healthy. I mean, everybody's going to be fully healthy. Smart, Triple J, Desmond Bane, GG Jackson at 19 looks like a real good rotational piece for you. So I'm excited about that. Even Santi Aldama looks like somebody that could be a stretch big man for you. Vince Williams, second round pick in 2022. Hell yeah, man. This guy looks like a great role player for you. You moved on from David Roddy. I don't think I have much faith in Zaire Williams ever coming around. A little bit more faith in Jake LaRavia, but you're going to also add a top pick in this draft. You're going to get Brandon Clark fully healthy next year as well, which is very exciting. So, like, basically, I just listed a decent amount of guys. Ja, franchise guy. Triple J and Bane. Great complementary pieces for sure. And like good number 2 and number 3s. And Triple J is still one of the best defenders in the league. And Bane's still one of the best shooters in the league. Marcus Smart, still a very good defender. And he'll be 30. He's not that old. That's 4 guys right there. Brandon Clark, 5. Vince Williams, 6. G.G. Jackson, 7. That's pretty good. You could still bring back Luke Kennard if you want. If you value that spacing, you could also leverage it in a trade. But he's been a good shooter. But if he's like your 9th guy, that's good. You don't want him to be like your 4th guy, but as your 9th guy, that's good. You could see if you have anything from Jake Laravia as well, like I mentioned, going forward. There could be some other guys that can maybe crack the rotation. I don't really know. I liked what I saw out of Trey Jamison, but I don't know if he's going to make this team. This seems too good in my opinion. And you're going to have a top 5 pick. Top 10 pick. Like, this team could definitely look to trade the pick if there's a larger deal on the table. I mean, they moved Steven Adams to the Rockets. They're 23 and 47. They're not really going to have cap space, but you can add, if they could draft Alex Sarr or Reese Shea. Oh my God, I love that. Even Ron Holland as a defensive 4 for them. That would be fun. And I think he could be a good rebounder for you. Even Matas Buzelis as well. Even if you wanted to go Donovan Clingan, I think getting a true 5 could be good for this team. If they could land Alex Sarr, though, oof, this team is scary. It's funny because basically every team that I just talked about, I would have loved to see Alex Sarr too. Maybe Detroit a little bit less, but that should be obviously, I think he's going to be the number 1 guy in this class still. Reese Shea could be a fun guy to them. I would not draft a guard. Just with Smart and like obviously Ja, you hope it's going to play 35 plus minutes a night, but they could be very scary next year. And Memphis is obviously going to be the best team going forward out of the 5 I just mentioned. So that was a very long topic number 1. I promise the next 4 will not be as long. So in the young core video, I talked about the Houston Rockets. I think you guys maybe thought I had them a little bit too low because I had them behind Orlando and San Antonio. And I wanted to talk about their young core going forward and who may be an odd man out, who may not be, and what's going to happen with that. So it's looking like they are going to have a lottery pick this year via Brooklyn. I don't think they get that 10th spot. So who knows? That pick's not even protected. So they could end up with another top pick. They would need, I think they're playing too well right now to probably get lucky to be in the top 4 where they would keep their pick. So it's most likely going to Golden State. And I also didn't mention it for Portland, but they also have Golden State's first rounder, which is actually looking pretty good. So for the Rockets, I think you have to there's not enough minutes to go around with some of these guys going forward. You assume Fred VanVleet is still going to play 30 plus minutes a night next year. You assume Şengün is your guy going forward. I think that's non-negotiable. I still think you have a lot in Jabari Smith, and I don't think you're bringing anybody in to take his minutes. I think there's probably 4 guys where it's a little bit more uncertain next year. Jalen Green is one. It's a big year for Jalen Green. Has shown a ton of inconsistencies, shows so much potential and so many flashes at times for this Rockets team. He's playing well as of late, where he could still be your franchise shooting guard for sure. He could even, I thought he could have been a point guard at one point as well. I think you play the maxi route with Jalen Green. You bring him back next year. You don't extend him this offseason. And if he shows you that, all right, this dude is a legit dude, pay him the rookie max. I mean, you don't want to do what happened with Jordan Poole, but at worst, you can bump up his trade value and potentially move him. I think he could get moved this offseason. I think I talked about it with Scoot. We've seen great flashes from Amen Thompson in his rookie season, especially on the defensive end. Let's not hinder his development, please. Please. He's playing 20 minutes a night. I need that to go up to at least 25, 26 next year. If it's still hovering around 20, I'm going to get nervous. Like if he's going to his age 23 season with no improvements and no improvements on his jumper either, which does not look very good, I will be a little bit upset because he's one of the most athletic young players in this league. I think Cam Whitmore as well, playing 18 minutes a night this year. I need to see that go up next year. Now, who's going to lose minutes next year? Is it going to be Dylan Brooks? I don't know. He probably doesn't need to play 37 minutes a night, but Udoka probably feels like he has to, watching this Rockets team and how important VanVleet is and as a leader and someone that actually knows what they're doing on the court and how important he is for Şengün's development as well. So I think you have your top 8 core with all those guys that I mentioned, and Tari Eason as well. Like, he only played in 22 games this year, averaged 22 minutes a night. I need to see him play 25 minutes a night next year, around there, and I need to see him fully healthy because he could be such a huge piece to this guy or to this team as a role player going forward. I just think the Rockets, especially if they're going to add the Brooklyn top 10 pick, which they could trade. You could trade that to Brooklyn and just defer it for them. Maybe you just be like, all right, give us your 2029 first. We'll give you this first back. I don't know. Maybe they make a trade for Mikal Bridges if that's the Jalen Green and like the Nets pick this year for him. I don't know, but they're going to have the Nets pick this year, a swap with the Nets next year, the Nets pick again in 2026, and a swap with the Nets in 2027. So they're going to have some rookie contracts coming in, rookie guys coming in. I don't know who's going to be best fitted for this team. Don't think they need another Jacoby Walter. I don't think they need him if they're going to keep Jalen Green. I think Stephon Castle, but like you have Amen Thompson. They have Steven Adams as the backup 5, but you could still look at Donovan Clingan or Filipowski. I don't mind Dalton Connect, but now you're probably putting Connect and Cam Whitmore against each other. There's some big decisions for the Houston Rockets going forward. They have the right head coach, which is good. I don't like Dillingham on this team. I don't know. Like, Van Vliet has 2 more years on this deal. If he's playing this well for them, probably going to want to sign an extension, right? So I think for the Rockets, you got to figure out who's the odd man out. I assume it's maybe, I don't know if it's Jalen Green. I assume it's trending that way. But if they think Jalen Green is there, I don't want to see them put Amen Thompson's development on the back burner. I think you have something in Cam Whitmore. I think you have something in Tari Eason. And we knew that Jabari Smith was going to take a little bit of time to develop as well. And he's, 20 years old still? 20. And he's shown progress from year 1 to year 2. Let's keep prioritizing his development as well. Obviously, you have Şengün going forward. I just think there's going to be some question marks with the Rockets this offseason in regards to their young core. All right, and yeah, kind of talking about the Rockets owning the Nets pick, this will segue us into topic number 3. Where do the Nets go from here, man? So the Nets made the KG trade and the Paul Pierce trade, and they destroyed their future. Billy King destroyed this team's future. They didn't own their first round pick in 2016, goes to the Celtics. They go 21-61. Celtics draft Jaylen Brown. They don't own their first round pick in 2017. They go 20-62. It ends up going number 1. Boston doesn't want Markelle Fultz, so they trade down to 3 and select Jason Tatum. They don't own their first round pick in 2017. That ended up being Colin Sexton. But then they ended up taking on D'Angelo Russell's contract, taking on Timothy Mozgov's contract, so the Lakers can go out and sign some guys. And they ended up bringing in D'Angelo Russell. They traded Thad Young for a pick to draft Karis LeVert. They brought in some other guys on cheaper deals like Spencer Dinwiddie, Jared Dudley, Jared Allen. They hit in a late first round pick as well in 2017, and they were a playoff team in 2019. They went 42-40. That had enough sway to convince Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving to come. They traded for James Harden before the 2021 season, or right in the beginning of it. They hired Steve Nash, fired Kenny Atkinson in the 2020 season, and it's all gone to shit. It's basically back to square one. It was one of the greatest rebuilds in NBA history, what Sean Marks did with that team. But now, not owning their first round pick this year, swaps that don't favor them in 25 and 27, don't own their first round pick in 26. It's not looking great. Now, obviously, since they moved Harden, they moved KD, they moved Kyrie. They have a bunch of first-round picks from other teams kind of going forward. Like in 2025, they have Phoenix's first. They'll have Phoenix first again in 2027. They have the Sixers first in 2027 from the Harden deal. They'll have a Mavericks first-round pick as well. They have swaps with the Suns. So, if the Suns are bad, then the Nets will be fine. But they have Devin Booker still, so I don't know if that's going to happen. And you're paying Ben Simmons $37 million this year, who's not playing again this year. $40 million next year, and then you're finally done with that. Cam Johnson just got an extension, which it's kind of descending, and then it goes back up at 27. I don't think he's been worth that contract, at least in my opinion. Mikal Bridges is due for an extension possibly at the end of this year or next year, because he could be a free agent after 2026. But still making good money. Finney-Smith, I think they should look to move this offseason. Dennis Schroeder, there's a reason why Toronto probably wanted off of him. I don't know if you can trade him to a team. I talked about veteran point guards. I don't think San Antonio or Portland would be interested in Dennis Schroeder. Maybe Washington. Probably not, though. Nick Claxton's a free agent. Noah Clowney and Derek Whitehead didn't show too much their rookie season. Cam Thomas is due for an extension at the end of this year on a rookie extension if they want to give it to him. The Nets have a lot of question marks going forward. I think, they blew a chance. Apparently there was a room at offer where they got all their first round picks back and Jalen Green from Mikal Bridges in the beginning of the year, and they said no. Obviously, in hindsight, they should have did that trade. I think Mikal Bridges, Nick Claxton, and Cam Thomas are your core. That's a 3-man core right there going forward. I'm not saying that should be your top 3. That should most likely be your 3, 4, and 5. You still need to find your top 2. But I think you need to be competitive enough where you're not blowing top 10 picks. Losing the 10th overall pick this year will not hurt. Losing out on Kyle Filipowski or Tijon Salon will not really destroy you like losing out on Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum. So I think the Nets need to work on being better next year, or at least trying to close that gap between them and the Rockets. Because if you're going to lose the difference between 3 to 4 picks next year, since it's a swap, that's fine. And then in 2026, you need to be good. I don't want them to lose out on another top 5 pick or another generational talent, in which there could be next year in Cooper Flagg or Cam or in Ace Bailey or Dylan Harper, a ton of talent next year that you don't want to be a bottom 5 team. So I think, I don't know if a team like Portland would take on Ben Simmons, if you could take Jeremy Grant from them. But then again, Jeremy Grant, not a great contract going forward, but at least it makes you somewhat competitive, and he's actually making less than Ben Simmons. And then you could still have some contract flexibility. I don't know if you'd want DeAndre Ayton, but that probably means you're losing Nick Claxton. This team needs a point guard. It does. And I don't know if a reunion with D'Angelo Russell would make sense. I don't think Markelle Fultz and his inconsistent jumper would make sense. I mean, if they could pull off Tyus Jones, I would have loved that. Sign and trade Tyus Jones for Nick Claxton. I know that doesn't sound great, Nets fans, but in the long run, maybe not the worst idea. But this team needs a point guard. Free agency, point guard class, not great. They're not going to really have a draft pick out there. I don't know who's going to be on the trade market, but I think you got to find your point guard. It's not going to be Ben Simmons. You got to find your point guard. You have to at least be good enough where you're close with Houston next year. If Houston is the fifth worst team in the league, then you could be the fourth worst team in the league, right? But if Houston is a playoff team and you're a lottery team, it's not great. And if you're a bottom 5 team and Houston's a playoff team, that is horrible. That's not what you want next year because it's a swap. And I think that's what you need to close the gap. You realize you're not making the finals. You're not making a conference finals. You're probably not winning a playoff series for the next year unless something happens over the offseason where you can get Donovan Mitchell. But I'm not going to say that's going to happen. I think next year is a big year where you got to close the gap between you and Houston and then figure it out maybe in the 2025 offseason where free agency is a little bit better. It'll be a little bit better. I mean, Drew Holiday's a free agent this offseason. He could potentially be one with the player option. I don't think like Lonzo Ball's probably going to opt into his player option, but that's too much risk. I mean, Derek White will be a free agent then. So like 25 will be better. At least right now, but people will sign extensions. I think just the Nets need to do that going forward. All right, so I'm just going to actually blend topics 4 and 5 together. So for the Knicks, I just want to talk about their ceiling at full strength. I mean, the Knicks so far this year have been very good with OG Anunoby. I think they're 15 or 16-2 now when Anunoby plays. They've been without Julius Randle for a little bit. They are the 9th ranked defensive team, the 13th ranked offensive team. They just lost to the Nuggets last night. And I think at full strength, this Knicks team could be the second best team in the Eastern Conference. They could maybe beat Boston. Could. So I think like if the Knicks are without Julius Randle, they could lose to Orlando. They could lose to Indiana in round number 1 if it ended up being like that. But I think like the Knicks, I just want to see what they could be like with Randle and Anunoby because we got such a short stint with them and they had some really good wins. So I think like for the Knicks, as like a Knicks fan personally, I mean like Anunoby makes this team so much better. On the defensive end, I think the offense, it helps for sure because he's still consistent enough where he can give you 15 points, but he's not really a shot creator. Well, sometimes he is, but he's not like a lead initiator, right? He's not somebody that's going to be like, give the ball in isolation, let him run the pick and roll, and he can do that a couple times a game, right? He's more someone that gets set up, can cut, can slash, can just kind of fill those holes in transition and just in half-court sets where there's open space inside. But Anunoby, you're not like, and give him the rock. He's not that guy. So I'm excited to see what they could be like with Randle and Mitchell Robinson. And if they're fully healthy, conference finals is a realistic possibility. But if Randle's not healthy, this team could be a round 2 exit once again. So let's get into the final thing that I want to talk about, the round 1 matchups, what I would like to see. So we'll stick in the East. I think like just for pure entertainment aspects, right? Pure entertainment, that's really all this is, and what I would want to see in round number 1. I think Boston, Miami, round number 1 would be pretty freaking sick. A rematch from the conference finals, which we can get if Miami loses against, we'll say, Philadelphia or Indiana in the first leg of the play-in, but wins the second game. Boom. That is amazing right there. That's what I want to see. Boston, Miami. I think Miami-Milwaukee would be super fun as well. Rematch from last year's round 1. But if you can give me Boston and Miami in round 1, that would be insane. I think Milwaukee-Indiana, 2-7 matchup. They've had such a fierce rivalry this whole season. There was the honest game ball incident with Oscar Tshiebwe, and the Pacers have kind of owned them this year. Obviously, Halliburton looks completely different now that they have Pascal Siakam kind of fully integrated into that offense. That looks a little bit different. But yeah, give me Milwaukee, Indiana as the 2-7 matchup. I think it gets a little bit less exciting. Or like, I think like New York, Cleveland would be pretty sick as well. But I think it probably comes down to like whatever you want to see from Cleveland, New York, Orlando, and Philly. I don't think Orlando and Philly is like the greatest matchup in the world, like for an entertainment aspect. And I think Philly would probably love that draw if they get Embiid healthy. I'm sure the Knicks would rather face Orlando than Philly or Cleveland. But I think like Knicks Cleveland would be pretty fun if that's what it ended up being. Maybe Orlando's the 3 seed. Philly's the 6 seed. New York and Cleveland are the 4 and 5 again. Like that could be a ton of fun. And then in the Western Conference, this is tough. I would love to see Golden State in the playoffs, but I think I'd rather see the Lakers make it. So I'm sorry, Kings fans. I'm going to knock you out for this. I am. Even though I'm rooting for you guys more than the Lakers, but I'm going to knock you guys out for this exercise. So round 1, I guess Denver, Phoenix. Like if that's like a 1-8 or a 2-7, that'd be fun. That'd be really fun. Denver, Phoenix. because we saw them in the playoffs last year, and that'd be a terrible draw for Phoenix for sure. I think 1-8 Lakers Thunder, let's just see it. Like, can LeBron just be inevitable, and it doesn't matter if they just limp their way to the playoffs as an 8 seed and the Thunder just are at the top of the West the whole year as a young team? Would they be able to beat LeBron and AD? That'd be not a great matchup for the Thunder. I actually would love to see that in round number 1. Minnesota's going to make it regardless. I think Minnesota and the Pelicans, two good defensive teams going at each other, and I think both have a lot to prove as well for like the Pelicans, who have always kind of been around this area but haven't won a playoff series. And for Minnesota, let's see if Ant can be another playoff riser like as he elevated his stock last year. And then give me the Clippers and the Mavericks again. Give me Luka versus the Clippers. It is must-see TV every time we've seen it in the playoffs, so that's what I would like to see this year. So yeah, that is going for me. I hope you guys did enjoy 5 Things Friday. It was more like 10 or 11 Things Friday because I talked about 5 teams that were eliminated from the playoffs, and I talked about March Madness in the introduction as well. You guys are probably going to be listening to this and seeing this later in the day on Friday. So yeah, there's probably March Madness going on. Hope you guys did enjoy. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're not already. You guys can let me know in the comments what you guys think down below. And then if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I'd appreciate you leaving a rating and review. It really goes a long way, so I'd appreciate that a ton. I love you guys, and I'll catch you guys next week with the next episode of the Just Ballin' Podcast. Peace.